Hey everybody, and welcome to video number 4 on chapter 15, where we'll be discussing religion and philosophy in the Tang and the Song era. So with the religion, we're really mostly going to be focusing on Buddhism. Now, foreign religions had spread throughout China in the centuries after the collapse of the Han Dynasty. You had Nestorian Christians, you had Manichaeans, you had Zoroastrians fleeing after Islam had really taken over Persia and the Middle East. You even had some small Muslim communities brought by Persian and Arab merchants. Buddhism, though, wouldn't really start to take hold in China until after the establishment of the community of Dunhuang. There we go. All right. Now, Buddhism first came to China along the Silk Road through merchants in the early centuries of the Common Era. But it was really in the oasis town of Dunhuang that it started to take root and eventually spread outwards throughout the rest of China. Now, oasis towns, as you can see, the current picture of Dunhuang, kind of, an amazing phenomenon of green and water in the middle of the desert. They were the lifeblood, and so merchants from all walks of life would set up shop there, and Buddhists really found a haven there. It was a place where they were able to kind of use the surrounding caves where they would build these really amazing temples. There would be libraries in there. They'd have these amazing works of Buddhist art and murals and so forth. So Dunhuang really became a center of Buddhist, kind of a lifeline of Buddhism into China. Once it got there, it began to spread, and it was mostly due to three main features of it when we talk about the appeal of Buddhism. The first two, the high standards of morality and the intellectual sophistication of Buddhism, that appealed to the Confucian ethics, kind of that Confucian background within the Chinese. Confucianism deals an awful lot with morals and ethics and standards of behavior and so forth, and with the scholarship of Confucianism, that would have an easy connection with the intellectual sophistication of Buddhism. But there was an aspect of Buddhism that could not be matched by Confucianism, and that was the promise of salvation. Confucianism, being a philosophy, doesn't deal with higher power or salvation. So that was one thing that Buddhism could offer that Confucianism did not. However, it was not all good. There were some significant challenges to Buddhism. First and foremost, there were some significant cultural differences. Buddhism really focuses on the metaphysical, on the higher, kind of the nature of the universe and our place within the universe and so forth, whereas Confucianism is really much more practical concerns, especially about government. Buddhism also supported an ascetic celibate lifestyle. Okay, celibate meaning foregoing any wives or children or things of that nature. Whereas, in Chinese culture, the family unit was very, very important, and they supported having lots of kids. So celibacy was a problem for a lot of Chinese. Plus, many Chinese viewed it as a inferior foreign ideology. Remember, we said the Chinese could be very ethnocentric, and so foreign ideologies were looked down upon. So there was some difference, some issues they had with Confucianism. There were also some issues they had with Taoism. Now, Buddhists, rather than try and completely take over Taoism, they saw Taoism as a way to kind of rectify the different beliefs, as kind of combine them. So the concept of Dharma, they said, well, that's basically the same thing as Tao, meaning the way, right? Dharma is the path that you follow according to your lot in life. They said, well, all right, that's kind of the same thing. We can rectify that. And they also said the concept of nirvana, that ultimate achievement with achieving union with the universe, is the same as as the Taoist consequent of Wu Wei. All right, a kind of a higher state of being. So there were some ways of kind of combining the two and rectifying the two. This resulted in a new branch of Buddhism known as Chan Buddhism. In Japan, it became known as Zen Buddhism. All right, so it incorporated certain elements of Taoism into it. There was persecution of Buddhists. Both Taoists and Confucians resisted the spread of Buddhism. This would eventually be backed by later Tang emperors, towards the end of the Tang dynasty. They would close Buddhist monasteries and seize property. It didn't eradicate it completely, and it remained popular among the people. That's why Buddhism is still around to this day in China. Now, Neo-Confucianism, so turning away from the religion of Buddhism and now into the philosophy. The Song Dynasty especially went all in on Confucianism. Remember, we talked about the Song Dynasty with the expansion of the bureaucracy and that bureaucracy of merit. But there was a change to it, right? Neo, the prefix there meaning new. And a lot of this comes from the Buddhist influence. Buddhism, even though it was resisted by a lot of Confucianism, there was no stopping it. It was there, and so it was inevitably going to influence the kind of already there philosophies and ideologies. Neo-Confucianism, it took on some certain Buddhist characteristics. It explored more metaphysical concerns as opposed to only the practical. The most important Neo-Confucian thinker was this guy, Zhu Xi. He still focused on the moral standards and proper behavior in family, but he also looked at things such as the nature of reality. He espoused these in these these two principles known as Li and Qi. Where he kind of developed this ideology on, what's our place in the universe? So it was a combination of both the metaphysical and the practical. Neo-Confucianism would be around in China for a very long time. It remained the official ideology of China until the early 20th century, when it was kind of done away with. And it would be very influential throughout East Asia, which we'll talk about in the next video. All right, so as I said, the next video we'll talk about Chinese influence, so that kind of wraps it up with philosophy and religion here.